Hey everyone, welcome to another $1,000 strap search. I've got my $1,000 in singles here and I'm about to show you what I found. But before I do, let's talk about this week's tip. Now, if you're a coin collector, one of the more fun things that I see people doing is they will buy a coin that they think is undergraded. Then they will crack that coin out and resubmit it trying to get a better grade. Coins are interesting because, first and foremost, if you have an individual coin, there is no way to identify that individual coin. But if you try to do the same thing with paper money, well, every single note has a serial number. So if you buy a graded note and you think it should grade higher than what it does, you can send it in for regrading, a regrade, but you can't crack it out and send it in for a regrade. What I mean is, all of the information on that note is stored. So if you take the note out of the case and resubmit it as a brand new note, the first thing they're going to do is just type that into their little computer and find out exactly how it graded before. Now, yeah, they may review the note and try to determine whether or not it's a higher or lower grade. But the fact of the matter is, all of that information is already known. You aren't getting somebody's, I don't want to say honest opinion, but you're not getting fresh eyes looking at it because they're already being told that note grades whatever before they even start. So when you see people cracking out coins trying to up the grade, that's a whole different animal than with currency. Do not waste money trying to crack out currency. The other thing about that is you can go on the websites and see how many of these notes have been graded, but you can also do the same thing with coins, which really makes me wonder, if people keep submitting the same coin over and over again, aren't they artificially inflating the number of coins that are graded in that particular grade? And at what point does that start to negatively affect the value? That's one thing I don't understand. I mean, if there are only, I don't know, let's say 500 coins that are graded a particular grade, 500 coins graded a 65. Well, if 10 people in every state decide they're going to crack out a coin and try to up that grade, and none of them succeed, well, now there are 1,000 coins that are being graded that particular grade rather than 500. So now there looks like there's a whole lot more of them, but realistically, they're not, Anyway, it was just an interesting thought process I had as far as grading and cracking out. Don't crack out your bills. It's a waste of money. Even if you try to cross them from one to the other, I'm pretty sure they communicate, so it'd be easy enough for them to figure it out. All right, let's slide these out of the way and take a look at what I found this week. Starting off with a Where's George? Very familiar with this one. I see this quite often. I found this one is a stripper note. Kind of a stripper note. It's not in the, it feels that way more than you can see it that way, but yeah, it's still a little bit transparent there like that. It's also interesting because of the serial number on there. Almost a rotator except for that one. Doesn't matter. That's going back in circulation. This one's an alternator. The 4 alternates. You've got 24, 24, 64, 04. So that's kind of neat. Let's see. Trinary here. I save trinaries trying to pair numbers. Not because trinaries are worth anything, but I think it's cool to have 2 notes with the same serial number. And some of you may wonder, well, what do you do with all your other trinaries? Well, to me, it is the greatest savings account ever, because now I have a shoebox full of 1,500 trinaries, which are still worth $1 a piece, which means over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, just in trinaries, I've managed to save $1,500 without even thinking about it. So think of that as a positive aspect of doing that. Anyway, this is 6s, 8s, and 9s, 1s, 5s, and 8s, 3s, 4s, and 6s, 0s, 2s, and 3s, and quads. Quad 1s with a 5th, quad 8s, and some stars. Starting off with a 2017 A star, always checking to see if they're filled in. And yeah, the BEP isn't going to be printing more stars. They're changing the way they're doing stuff. So stars are going to be a thing of the past, probably helping to inflate the value of some of these. Another 2017A, always looking to see if they're filled. 2017, 2017, 2017, 2013, 2009, and then some older notes. I always save notes that are 20 years and older. The 2003A series makes 20 years, so that's a 2003A, another one. They're not in the greatest of shape, so these will probably be going back in circulation. I generally keep the best one and let all the rest go back. 2003, 2001, much harder note to find than you would think. 1999, really rough shape, so that's going to go away. 1999, also pretty dirty. 1999, 1995, another 95. This one's in good shape. Another 95, 1988, and the oldest note I found this week, I found a series 1963B, one of the Joseph W. Barr notes. These notes were only printed for 30 days, which made them extremely rare, in theory. In reality, everybody knew these notes were extremely rare, so everybody saved them, which means you are much more likely to run across a 1963B than you are a 1963, because there are just so many of them that had been put aside, put in envelopes, put in books, saved and not spent. Now people will find these in books and they will just think it's a normal dollar and spend them. So you actually see quite a few of these in circulation. So not a whole lot of value in this heavily circulated one, but still an interesting find nonetheless. All right, so that's what I found this week. What did I pull out? Well, you guys probably recently saw the video of me and Dan at Central States, and you saw me making the purchase, but you couldn't see the note. What did I pick up? Well, I chalked off another note off of my top 100 list. This one is the 1882 $5 Brownback. This particular one's from New York, and you can see here it says the American Exchange National Bank of New York City. Now, Brownbacks are actually part of the top 100, and this particular one is number 33 of the top 100. I think that puts me up to 31 or 32. I'll have to double check my count. It does feature President Garfield on there, who was assassinated after only 8 months in office, if I recall. Now, the Brownbacks are the second charter period. The first charter period was actually divided in two. There was the original charter period from, I want to say 1865, and then by 1875, that's the 1875 series, they actually started putting the charter numbers on right about in this location. The charters were good for 20 years, so 1882 started the next charter period, and that's where we have the second charter period, and these are the Brownbacks. That's where you're going to find a series of original banknotes that were now expiring and were rechartered. You can see on here, this one is charter number 1394, and it's interesting because they use that 1394 as part of the image throughout the note. 1394 there. The Nationals also had two serial numbers. They had a serial number for the individual bank, which this one is 544779, and then they had a serial number as in for the Brownbacks in general, and this particular one is K162574K. It's interesting because when I looked this one up, this is a pretty high serial number. It's almost as high as you can get, and I'll show that in 1 second. Looking at the back, you can see why they call it a Brownback. One of the cool parts here is dead center in green ink. They have the charter number. This one, like I said, 1394. That's in the center of all of them. So, I mean, it was really part of the printing process. This one isn't in the greatest of shape, but when you consider what it is, I was very proud to finally get one of these. Now these can get a little bit expensive. This one being from New York, the state of New York had the most banks that were chartered. I think well over 274 banks, if I remember correctly. So finding a New York brownback is much easier to do than, say, a Wyoming brownback. Those would be ridiculously expensive. In fact, let's slide this out of the way and take a look at the big book. Let me show you what we got here. Here's the brownback this is Paper Money of the United States, the blue book, by the way. Everybody always asks, what book did you use? So there it is. And first issue series of 1862 brownbacks. Mine is Rosecrans and Hudson. So it is number 471. And is that what it says here? Let's take a look. Oh, it says 472. 472. Rosecrans and Nebecker. Let me just look at that real quick. Well, that's interesting because it's not. Because there's Rosecrans. And that says Houston. And it's not. Isn't that interesting? Once again, let's look at that real quick, what I'm talking about. Here's the Secretary of the Treasury, Rosecrans. And on this side, that's definitely Houston. That's Houston. And they clearly listed as FR 472. And FR 472 is Rosecrans and Nebecker. 471 is Rosecrans and Hudson. It doesn't change anything on the note because these prices here in the big book are the generic prices. These are the prices for the most common notes. And you're going to see in VG8, you're talking $450. By the time you get to 12, you're at $500. In a 20, you're at $700. When you get to the really nice notes, you're talking $27.50. And that's just for the basic note. Now, as you can see down here, mine is New York. And if I look at New York, 274. And in fine, it's worth 500, which is what it says here, fine 500. But then you look at some of the other ones. New Mexico Territory is 4,000 in a fine. Look at this one here. Washington Territory, $35,000 to find one in a grade 12. So yeah, I was quite content finding one in a grade 10. And you probably saw the price that was listed on this one right here. That was the asking price on it, which is $350 for a 10. Now remember, an 8 is $450. So I got it $100 less than the price of an 8, and it does grade out a 10. So I'd call that a pretty good deal. Let's look at the other book while we're at it. This is let me find the cover because I've got it opened up to the page. I just want to show you guys what book it is. Don Kelly's National Banknotes, 6th edition. And let's find it right here. 1394, New York, American Exchange National Bank of New York City. Originally chartered 7/6/65. And that's not 1965, that's 1865. And it was liquidated 11/8. That would be 1926 that the bank was liquidated. You can see they have the original series as well as the series of 1875 for notes. And then you can see here, brownbacks. The sheets had 4 $5 notes, and this one says $500 in a grade 20. They're a little bit more than that now, as you can see. But more importantly, look at the serial numbers. Serial numbers 1 through 585000. And if we look at this one, it's 544. Okay, so 585 was as high as you can get. So that means this was within, what is that, 25,000 of the last of the notes printed. So that's an extremely high number. Now, this Don Kelly book shows all kinds of other neat stuff too. If we look down at the bottom, you can see the total issue. There was 86 million notes, or $86 million worth of notes printed But out at close, when the bank was out, when the bank finally shut its doors, there were still $5 million in notes circulating. So that gives you an idea of how many are left compared to other places. This one issued 21 million and there's 1 million out there. Here's one that issued 1.1 million and only 600 or 6,200 are left. And that's the denomination worth, the value, not the number of notes. Anyway, I finally checked off the $5 Brownback from the top 100, number 33 in that book. So that's what I've got for you guys this week. This was my pickup from Central States. This was the big get for that show. All right, if you learned anything new, go ahead and hit that like button. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please subscribe. Love reading all your comments. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.